Let's hit 10,000 subscribers and I will give away $100 or a creepy doll to one lucky subscriber each week. Now let's begin our story. Highgate Cemetery, the haunting of Swains Lane address. Swains Lane, Highgate, London, N66. PJ known for its eerie atmosphere and hauntingly beautiful Victorian architecture, Highgate Cemetery is the final resting place of many notable figures. The West Cemetery in particular is renowned for its overgrown graves and ominous atmosphere. Now, the story about this place. In the heart of London's Highgate neighborhood, nestled behind an ornate iron gate and hidden beneath the dense canopy of ancient trees, lies one of the city's most infamous and chilling landmarks, Highgate Cemetery. Dating back to 1839, this Victorian cemetery has long been shrouded in a veil of mystery and superstition. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the moss-covered tombstones, the cemetery transformed into a realm of eerie beauty. Twisting ivy clung to towering obelisks, and weathered angels watched solemnly over the graves. Visitors often spoke of the unsettling stillness that permeated the air, as if time itself held its breath within the cemetery's bounds. But it wasn't just the melancholic beauty that drew people to Highgate Cemetery. It was the stories of the unexplained and the supernatural that whispered through the headstones. Tales of spectral figures, phantom mourners, and the legendary Highgate vampire had woven themselves into the fabric of local folklore. One moonless night, as the clock struck midnight, a group of daring individuals gathered at the cemetery's gate. Armed with cameras, torches, and nervous laughter, they sought to uncover the secrets of Highgate's shadows. Among them was Kate, a skeptic who had always scoffed at the notion of the paranormal. Their journey led them deeper into the heart of the cemetery, where the air grew colder and the silence more profound. Amidst the crumbling mausoleums, they encountered an atmosphere that transcended the ordinary. It felt as though the weight of centuries pressed upon them. As they explored, a sense of unease settled over the group. Some claimed to hear faint whispers in the wind, while others swore they saw fleeting apparitions among the graves. Kate, however, remained steadfast in her skepticism, dismissing these experiences as mere tricks of the imagination. But then, as they approached a particularly weathered and overgrown tombstone, a chilling encounter unfolded. Kate felt a sudden, inexplicable drop in temperature, and her skepticism wavered. A shadowy figure materialized before her, tall and gaunt, with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce her soul. The figure reached out a bony hand, and Kate felt a wave of icy dread wash over her. It whispered words she could not comprehend, a voice as old as the cemetery itself. At that moment, her skepticism shattered, and she realized she stood face to face with something beyond the realm of the living. Terrified, the group fled the cemetery, their cameras capturing only darkness and blurred shapes. Kate's encounter with the shadowy figure haunted her dreams for years to come, and she became a believer in the mysteries of Highgate Cemetery. To this day, visitors to Highgate Cemetery recount eerie encounters, spectral sightings, and unexplainable phenomena. The legends persist, and the cemetery remains a place where the line between the living and the dead blurs, and the past reaches out to touch the present in ghostly whispers. 2. The 10 Bells Pub. You heard about Jack the Ripper, right? Address, 84 Commercial Street, Spitalfields. The postcode is E16LY. This historic pub has connections to the infamous Jack the Ripper murders. It is said that some of his victims frequented this establishment, and ghostly sightings and strange occurrences have been reported over the years. Now, the story about this place, in the heart of London's East End, nestled among the bustling streets of Spitalfields, stood a centuries-old establishment with a dark and ominous history, the 10 Bells Pub. Its weathered facade, timbered beams, and flickering gas lamps harkened back to a bygone era, and its reputation was steeped in chilling tales of the infamous Jack the Ripper. As the sun set over the cobblestone streets, casting long shadows upon the historic pub, the atmosphere inside grew increasingly eerie. Patrons gathered for a night of drinks and merriment, but it was impossible to ignore the lingering sense of unease that clung to the air, like a ghostly shroud. The 10 Bells had a sinister connection to the gruesome murders of Jack the Ripper, the notorious serial killer who terrorized London in the late 19th century. Two of his victims, Mary Jane Kelly and Annie Chapman, were believed to have frequented this very pub in their final hours. Their tragic stories and the mystery of the Ripper's identity cast a long, dark shadow over the Ten Bells. One fog-shrouded evening, as patrons shared whispered tales of the Ripper and sipped their pints, something inexplicable occurred. Glasses clinked, candles flickered, and the air grew cold. It was as though a spectral presence had descended upon the pub, sending a shiver down the spines of those present. The pub's old wooden floorboards creaked, and a ghostly figure materialized near the bar, a shadowy silhouette with a top hat and cloak. The patrons fell into a hushed silence as they beheld the apparition. Some claimed it was the spirit of Jack the Ripper himself, forever bound to the scene of his heinous crimes. But it was not the figure's appearance alone that sent a chill through the pub. It was the sound, a low, haunting laughter that echoed through the room. It was as if the Ripper's malevolent spirit reveled in the terror it inspired. In the ensuing years, visitors to the Ten Bells reported similar encounters: phantom footsteps, inexplicable drafts, and ghostly apparitions. The pub's connection to the Ripper murders and the eerie experiences within its walls had transformed it into a magnet for those seeking a brush with the supernatural. Despite its unsettling reputation, the Ten Bells pub continued to draw curious visitors and locals alike, each hoping to catch a glimpse of the spectral echoes of Jack the Ripper and his unfortunate victims. The pub stood as a haunting reminder of a dark chapter in London's history, where the past and the present merged in a chilling dance of the macabre. 3. The Old Operating Theatre Museum. The Ghostly Patient's Address. 9. A St. Thomas Saint, the postcode is SE19RY, housed in the attic of an 18th century church. This museum displays surgical instruments and equipment from a bygone era. Visitors often describe a chilling and unsettling feeling while exploring the exhibits. Now, the story about this place. In the heart of London, hidden away in the attic of St. Thomas Church, lay the eerie and unsettling Old Operating Theatre Museum. It was a place where the boundaries between life and death blurred, where the dimly lit and narrow wooden corridors whispered chilling secrets of a bygone era. The museum was a time capsule, preserving the grim and gruesome history of surgery in the 18th and 19th centuries. Visitors were greeted by a collection of rusted surgical instruments, weathered bone saws, and a chilling array of anatomical specimens. It was a place where the horrors of early medicine came to life. One particularly overcast afternoon, a group of curious tourists ventured into the museum's shadowy halls. They marveled at the macabre displays and shuddered at the thought of undergoing surgery in such primitive conditions. Little did they know that their visit would take a spine-chilling turn. As they meandered through the exhibits, a bone-chilling sensation settled over the group. It was as if the very walls were whispering tales of suffering and despair. Unexplained drafts seemed to carry mournful cries through the corridors, and shadows danced in the corners of their vision. But it was when they reached the museum's centerpiece, the Old Operating Theatre itself, that the true horror began. The room was an eerie spectacle, a tiered wooden amphitheater where medical students had once observed gruesome surgeries. Visitors claimed to hear the phantom screams of long-deceased patients and the agonized pleas of surgeons. As the group watched in disbelief, a spectral figure materialized on the operating table, an ethereal patient in tattered hospital garb. His face contorted in pain, and he writhed in silent torment as unseen hands performed gruesome procedures. The visitors were frozen in terror as the apparition's hollow eyes met theirs. The room grew colder, and the air became thick with an overwhelming sense of dread. The group fled the operating theater, their screams echoing through the haunted corridors. They emerged from the museum, shaken and pale, their belief in the supernatural forever solidified. The Old Operating Theatre Museum continued to draw curious souls seeking a glimpse into the grim history of medicine. But for those who had witnessed the ghostly patients and their eternal suffering, it remained a place where the past bled into the present, a chilling reminder that the echoes of pain and despair could endure long after the operating theater had closed its doors. 4. Crossbones Graveyard, The Restless Souls. Address: Red Cross Way, postcode is SE11TA. Once a pauper's burial ground, this site is now a memorial to the outcasts of society. Visitors have reported ghostly apparitions and a sense of unease while visiting the area. Now, the story about this place. In the heart of London's Southwark neighborhood, hidden amidst the urban sprawl, lies a desolate and forgotten patch of land known as Crossbones Graveyard. Unmarked and unremembered for centuries, it is a place of sorrow, an unconsecrated burial ground where the outcasts and forgotten souls of the city were laid to rest. Crossbones was a final resting place for paupers, prostitutes, and those who had nowhere else to go. It was a place where society's marginalized found a bleak refuge in death. For generations, it remained an open wound in the city's history, left to decay and be swallowed by time. One moonless night, as a dense fog rolled through the cobblestone streets, a group of intrepid explorers ventured into the graveyard's eerie realm. Armed with lanterns and a shared curiosity, they sought to uncover the secrets hidden within the tangled undergrowth. The air was damp and oppressive, and the atmosphere weighed heavily upon the group as they moved among the weathered and unmarked graves. The silence was broken only by the distant sounds of the city, a haunting reminder of the world beyond the graveyard's crumbling walls. As the explorers delved deeper into the graveyard's heart, they felt an unsettling presence watching their every move. Some claimed to hear faint whispers carried on the wind, voices choked with sorrow and longing. Others reported feeling phantom touches and the sensation of icy fingers brushing against their skin. But it was when they stumbled upon an unmarked mass grave that the true horrors of Crossbones revealed themselves. The ground seemed to quiver beneath their feet, and spectral figures began to materialize before their eyes, shadows of the forgotten souls who had found their eternal rest in this unhallowed ground. The figures wore tattered rags, their faces etched with despair and anguish. They reached out imploringly, their ghostly hands seeking solace and recognition. The explorers were overcome with a sense of overwhelming sadness and guilt, as if they had intruded upon a sacred and sorrowful sanctuary. In that eerie moment, the explorers made a pact, a promise to remember and honor the forgotten souls of Crossbones Graveyard. They left offerings of flowers and candles, vowing to bring attention to the plight of those who had been cast aside by society. As they departed the graveyard, they felt the weight of centuries of suffering upon their shoulders. The restless spirits of Crossbones had left an indelible mark on their souls, a reminder that even in death, the marginalized and forgotten deserve to be remembered. 5. The Clink Prison Museum, Echoes of Tortured Souls. Address: 1 Clink Street, London SSC 19DG. This museum was built on the site of the notorious Clink Prison, where inmates endured unspeakable horrors. Visitors can explore the dungeons and learn about the grim history of this former prison. Now, the story about this place. Amidst the bustling streets of London, hidden within the darkened alleyways of Southwark, lay a grim reminder of the city's sinister past, the Clink Prison Museum. This macabre museum stood on the very site of the infamous Clink Prison, a place of torment and suffering where countless souls had endured unspeakable horrors. One foggy evening, a group of curious tourists ventured into the museum's foreboding entrance. They were drawn by tales of the prison's gruesome history and the chilling artifacts that now filled its dimly lit chambers. It was a place that invited visitors to step back in time and experience the agony of the past. As they explored the museum's labyrinthine corridors, the tourists couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. Shadows danced on the damp stone walls, and the air was heavy with the weight of centuries of suffering. They moved from cell to cell, each one more foreboding than the last. It was in one particularly sinister cell that the group encountered something beyond explanation. They heard faint, anguished whispers that seemed to seep from the very stones themselves. The chilling voices spoke of pain, betrayal, and despair, they echoed with otherworldly grief. As they listened in disbelief, a spectral figure materialized before them, an apparition clad in ragged prison attire, its eyes hollow and haunted. It reached out from behind the rusted bars as if yearning for freedom from its eternal torment. The tourists were paralyzed by fear, unable to tear their gaze away from the ghostly prisoner. The air grew colder, and a palpable sense of malevolence enveloped the cell. The tourists fled in terror, their screams echoing through the museum's echoing halls. They emerged onto the dimly lit Southwark streets, shaken and pale, their encounter with the supernatural etched into their memories. The Clink Prison Museum continued to draw visitors seeking a glimpse into London's dark past, but for those who had witnessed the tormented spirit within its walls, it remained a place where the agonies of the past bled into the present, chilling reminder that the echoes of suffering endured long after the last cell door had closed. 6. The Flask Pub, the haunting of Hampstead address, 14 Flask Walk, postcode is NW31. The Flask is a historic pub with a reputation for being haunted. Patrons have reported encounters with a ghostly barmaid who roams the premises, and the building's eerie past adds to the atmosphere. Now, the story about this place. Tucked away in the picturesque neighborhood of Hampstead, London stood the Flask Pub, an unassuming establishment with an ominous reputation. Its ivy-covered exterior and centuries-old charm belied the unsettling stories whispered in hushed tones among the locals. It was said that the pub's history was as dark and mysterious as the shadows that clung to its corners. On a particularly misty evening, a group of friends gathered inside the Flask, seeking refuge from the chilling embrace of the London fog. The dimly lit interior exuded an old-world charm, with ancient oak beams and cozy nooks that seemed to beckon them deeper into the heart of the pub. As the night wore on, the pub's atmosphere grew increasingly eerie. Patrons spoke in hushed voices, their words punctuated by the occasional clink of glasses and the creaking of floorboards. It was as though the building itself retained the memories of its long and enigmatic history. The group settled into a corner booth, drawn by the pub's peculiar aura. They exchanged stories of the paranormal and the unexplained, eager to discover if the Flask's reputation was deserved. But it was when their conversation turned to the legend of a ghostly bride that things took a sinister turn. The tale is told of a tragic bride who had met her end on her wedding day, her life cut short under mysterious circumstances. Locals claim to have seen her apparition wandering the pub's darkened hallways, her tattered wedding gown trailing behind her. Some spoke of feeling a ghostly presence or hearing mournful whispers. An eerie chill settled over the booth as the group shared their stories. Unbeknownst to them, their conversation had drawn the attention of the restless spirit. Suddenly, the temperature in the corner plummeted, and an unnatural stillness descended upon the pub. A flickering candle on their table sputtered and died, casting the booth into complete darkness. A cold breeze ruffled their hair, and a ghostly figure materialized before them, a spectral bride with vacant eyes and an air of profound sadness. The group sat frozen in terror, unable to comprehend the apparition before them. The ghostly bride reached out a pale, ethereal hand, her fingers brushing against their cheeks like a whisper of frost. Her mournful gaze seemed to implore them to understand her tragic tale. In that unsettling moment, the group's disbelief transformed into empathy. They listened to the bride's wordless lament, and as her spectral form faded away, the temperature in the corner returned to normal. The group left the Flask Pub that night with a newfound respect for the tales of the paranormal and an enduring curiosity about the restless spirit they had encountered. The Flask Pub remained a place of fascination for visitors and locals alike, where the line between the living and the dead blurred, and the past merged seamlessly with the present. It stood as a reminder that some stories were meant to be shared and remembered, no matter how unsettling. 7. Epping Forest. Where Shadows Beckon. This has various entry points around London. Epping Forest is a vast woodland with a history of dark legends and paranormal sightings. The dense trees and secluded paths make it a spooky destination, especially after dark. Now, the story about this place. Epping Forest, a sprawling woodland on the outskirts of London, beckoned explorers and nature enthusiasts with its ancient trees, winding trails, and a history that spanned centuries. But beneath its tranquil exterior lay a darker, more mysterious side, an enigma that defied explanation and invited those brave enough to seek the unknown. One moonless night, a group of adventurous friends ventured into the heart of Epping Forest. Armed with flashlights and a shared sense of curiosity, they followed a meandering path into the depths of the woods. The air was thick with an unsettling stillness, and the towering trees seemed to converge overhead, blocking out the feeble glow of the distant stars. As they ventured deeper into the forest's embrace, the group felt an inexplicable sense of unease. Faint rustlings in the underbrush and distant whispers added to their growing apprehension. The further they went, the more the forest seemed to resist their intrusion. The path they followed eventually led them to an ancient clearing, where an eerie silence descended like a shroud. In the center of the clearing stood a gnarled and twisted tree, its branches contorted into grotesque shapes. A palpable sense of dread hung in the air, and the group hesitated, unsure of what lay before them. It was then that they heard it, a faint, haunting melody that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the sinister tree. It was a song of sorrow and longing, a spectral serenade that sent shivers down their spines. They scanned the clearing but could see no source for the eerie music. As they drew closer to the haunted tree, its branches began to move as if guided by an unseen hand. They reached out, their fingers brushing against the rough bark, and the melody grew louder, filling their ears with an inexplicable sorrow. The forest itself seemed to respond, with the trees around them swaying in time to the ghostly song. In that haunting moment, the group realized that they were not alone. Shadows materialized among the trees, spectral figures with hollow eyes and mournful expressions. They danced and swayed to the melody, their movements a macabre ballet of the afterlife. Terrified and awestruck, the group watched as the spectral dance continued. It was as though the forest itself had come alive with the echoes of the past, a place where the boundaries between the living and the dead blurred, and the ancient trees whispered secrets of sorrow and longing. As dawn approached, the spectral figures gradually faded, and the haunting melody receded into the depths of the forest. The group left Epping Forest forever changed, their encounter with the otherworldly a reminder that some mysteries were not meant to be solved, some places were best left untouched. Epping Forest remained a place where shadows beckoned, a sanctuary for the unexplained and the supernatural, and a testament to the enduring enigma of the natural world. 8. The Ragged School Museum. Lessons in the Unseen Address. 46, 50 Copperfield Ard. Postcode is E34RR, housed in an eerie Victorian schoolhouse. This museum showcases the harsh conditions faced by impoverished children in the 19th century. Visitors often report feeling a sense of sadness and unease while exploring. Now, the story about this place. In the heart of London's East End, tucked away amidst the labyrinthine streets of Mile End, lay the Ragged School Museum, a place where the echoes of the past whispered haunting tales of hardship and despair. Once a school for the destitute and downtrodden, it had seen countless children seeking an education and a chance at a better life. One evening, a group of curious visitors ventured into the museum's dimly lit corridors. The air was thick with the scent of aged wood and fading memories. It was as if the very walls bore witness to the struggles of the past, their secrets hidden in the peeling wallpaper and creaking floorboards. As the visitors explored the museum's exhibits, each room seemed to transport them to a different era. Crumbling chalkboards bore the faded writings of long-forgotten lessons, and antique desks stood in silent testament to the children who had once occupied them. The group felt an eerie sensation, as though the spirits of these impoverished students still lingered, forever bound to the place where they had sought an education. Their journey led them to the heart of the museum, the recreated Victorian classroom. Here, visitors could sit at antique desks and experience the harsh realities faced by children in the 19th century. As the group settled into their seats, they couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness, the flickering gas lamps extinguishing one by one. Panic gripped the visitors as they struggled to find their way in the inky blackness. Desperate whispers filled the air, words uttered in hushed tones as if from unseen mouths. In the midst of the darkness, the group heard the sound of footsteps, faint but unmistakable. They echoed through the room, the footsteps of children who should not have been there. The visitors' hearts raced as they felt the chill of small hands brush against their skin, like phantom fingers reaching out from the past. Then, a voice. A whisper that seemed to come from all directions at once. It was the voice of a child, filled with a mixture of innocence and sorrow. The words were faint, but unmistakable. "Help us learn. Help us see the light." At that moment, the darkness lifted, and the gas lamps flickered back to life. The group found themselves alone in the classroom, their hearts heavy with the weight of the unseen presence they had encountered. It was as though the spirits of the Ragged School's forgotten students had sought one final lesson, a lesson in remembrance and acknowledgement. As they left the Ragged School Museum that night, the visitors carried with them the knowledge that the past could still touch the present, that the echoes of forgotten children could be heard in the quiet corners of history. The museum remained a place of haunting education, where lessons in the unseen continued to unfold for those willing to listen. 9. The Old Bailey, the spectral trial address. Central Criminal Court postcode is EC4M7 EEH. The Central Criminal Court, known as the Old Bailey, has been the site of numerous historic trials and executions. Some visitors claim to have encountered the spirits of former prisoners and judges within its walls. Now, the story about this place. In the heart of London, where the city's bustling streets converged, stood the imposing edifice of the Old Bailey, the Central Criminal Court, a place where justice was served with solemnity and the weight of centuries of trials and tribulations. But beneath its austere facade lay a deeper, more enigmatic layer, a realm where the echoes of past judgments still resided. One chilly evening, as the sun dipped below the city's skyline, a group of daring individuals ventured into the Old Bailey. Armed with lanterns and a shared sense of intrigue, they sought to unlock the mysteries concealed within the court's darkened chambers. The air was heavy with a palpable sense of solemnity as they moved deeper into the heart of the historic building. As they explored the labyrinthine corridors, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. Faint whispers seemed to drift through the stale air, carrying the weight of unspoken verdicts and the secrets of those who had faced judgment within these very walls. The group pressed on, determined to uncover the unknown. Their journey led them to the grand courtroom, a hallowed chamber where justice had been both meted out and denied. It was a place where the accused had stood before the stern gaze of judges, their fates hanging in the balance. The group's lanterns cast eerie shadows on the oak-paneled walls as they took their seats in the empty gallery. As they settled into the silence, a shiver ran down their spines. Suddenly, the air grew frigid, and the courtroom's vast chandelier swung ominously, casting flickering shadows upon the judge's bench. The group watched in astonishment as the figure of a spectral judge materialized before them, dressed in the robes of a bygone era. The ghostly judge raised a spectral gavel and spoke in a voice that resonated with the weight of countless judgments. He recounted the stories of those who had faced trial in this very courtroom, criminals, innocents, and those whose guilt had never been truly known. Each tale was a haunting narrative of human frailty and the unforgiving nature of the justice system. The group listened in rapt attention, unable to tear their gaze away from the spectral trial unfolding before them. The accused and the accuser seemed to materialize in ghostly form, replaying their roles in the age-old drama of justice and retribution. It was as though the courtroom had become a time capsule, preserving the agony and despair of those who had passed through its doors. As the spectral trial reached its climax, the judge's voice grew faint, and the chandelier ceased its eerie sway. The group was left in stunned silence, their understanding of justice forever altered by the spectral experience. They left the Old Bailey that night with a newfound appreciation for the complexities of the human condition and the enduring legacy of the court's haunted past. The Old Bailey remained a place where the past and present converged, a testament to the enduring mysteries of justice and the spectral trials that continued to unfold within its historic walls. 10. The Spaniards Inn, where spirits dwell address. Spaniards Ard. Postcode is NWW37JJ. This historic pub is rumored to be haunted by the ghost of highwayman Dick Turpin. Patrons have reported hearing footsteps, whispers, and even seeing a shadowy figure in the inn's dimly lit corners. Now, the story about this place. Nestled on the edge of London's Hampstead Heath, the Spaniards Inn stood as a timeless relic, a place where the centuries whispered secrets and shadows danced in the flickering candlelight. Its ivy-clad facade and oak-beamed interior belied the eerie tales whispered in hushed tones by patrons and locals alike. On a mist-shrouded evening, a group of adventurous friends made their way to the Spaniards Inn. Drawn by its rich history and reputation as one of London's oldest pubs, they sought to uncover the mysteries concealed within its time-worn walls. The air was thick with anticipation as they crossed the threshold into the dimly lit establishment. As they entered, the group was immediately struck by the pub's ageless charm. Ancient paintings adorned the walls, and the creaking floorboards seemed to speak of centuries of patrons who had come and gone. The atmosphere was heavy with the weight of countless stories, and the group sensed that they were entering a place where the past and present intermingled. They settled into a corner booth, drawn by the rustic allure of the inn. The low hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses filled the air, creating a sense of camaraderie. But as the night wore on, the pub's ambience shifted from conviviality to something more ominous. It began with a chill, a bone-deep cold that seemed to seep from the very walls. Patrons exchanged uneasy glances as the temperature in the room dropped. The group's breath misted in the frigid air as they huddled together, their sense of unease growing with each passing moment. Then came the whispers, faint, disembodied voices that echoed through the pub. The group strained to make out the words, but they were just beyond the threshold of comprehension. It was as though the spirits of the Spaniards Inn were sharing their tales, but only in fragments that tantalized and teased. The flickering candle flames cast eerie shadows on the inn's antique mirrors, and the group glimpsed fleeting figures that seemed to materialize and vanish in the blink of an eye. These spectral apparitions wore clothing from bygone eras, and their faces bore expressions of longing and sorrow. Amid the spectral display, the group felt an overwhelming sensation of being watched. They turned their gaze toward a corner of the pub, where a spectral figure materialized, a ghostly woman with long, flowing hair and eyes that held a mournful gaze. She beckoned to them, her ethereal form both beautiful and haunting. As the night wore on, the pub's spectral activity increased, and the group's sense of unease deepened. It was as though the Spaniards Inn had opened a portal to the past, inviting the spirits of bygone patrons to share in the revelry of the present. When the group finally left the Spaniards Inn that night, they did so with a profound sense of awe and wonder. They had witnessed something beyond explanation, a place where the veil between the living and the dead was thin, and where the spirits of the past continued to dwell. The Spaniards Inn remained a place where the echoes of history reverberated in the present, a testament to the enduring mysteries of the supernatural and the timeless allure of a pub where spirits both liquid and spectral flowed. Remember to respect any access restrictions or opening hours when visiting these locations. Be prepared for some spine-tingling experiences in London's creepiest spots. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for me and like this video. Keep it creepy and see you next time.